Moreno and CNN senior political reporter Nia Malika Henderson. So the president, Joe, has now asserted executive privilege over this unredacted Mueller report and the underlying evidence. It's important to just remind people of what this is about. The committee, the Judiciary Committee, is in the process of holding the Attorney General in contempt of Congress. How does this play out in the courts as you see it?
Well, so I don't like the term constitutional crisis. I think it's overused, but certainly things are breaking down, right? This is not the way things are supposed to happen. So you're right, though. The contempt vote today, when it happens, will be very dramatic. But the fact is the legal ramifications are unfortunately minimal because there's really no enforcement, because the executive branch controls the execution of the contempt. So really it goes to the courts. And the courts will have to decide on a facts and circumstances basis, does the privilege assertion by the president outweigh the need for Congress to get this information?
Do you think that we will ever see, or Congress will ever see, the full Mueller report? And what's the point of holding Bill Barr in contempt if there's not going to be any it appears there's not going to be an attempt to put him in jail, for instance?
No, there's not. Congress will eventually get this information, but it will take a long time, and it might not happen in time to actually do anything with it. So, eventually Congress will prevail. There's a strong preference of the courts to defer to Congress in their legislative and investigative priorities. That's fair. But there's many steps that have to be taken before you get to that point. So the reality is, will there be fatigue by Congress, by the executive branch, by the American people as this plays out for another year or two?
Does it also serve as a device for President Trump? Because, this, he must know how this is playing out, obviously, and that it's going to drag into his reelection effort.
Yeah, and this, Trump likes a fight, right? And he likes a foil, too. And we know who the foils are in this instance. It's Democrats, those sort of his favorite foils. Jerry Nadler, who he's never really had a very good relationship going back to their days in New York together. So in some ways, it's hard to say who is benefiting more from this fight that'll be obviously protracted, in some ways playing out on TV over the next weeks and months. If you're a Republican, you feel like, Democrats are dragging this out and you want this to end now, and you feel like this is an example of just Democratic overreach. And if you're a Democrat, maybe this is the next best thing to impeachment, right? Sort of showing that the president is stonewalling and sort of suggesting that the president has something to hide. He doesn't want the full transparency when it comes to everything involving the Mueller report.
The excuse that the Attorney General put forward for why executive privilege should be used in this case was because he said he hadn't had enough time to review all of these documents. There's a lot you can imagine in the underlying documents for the Mueller report. And he said some of them, and we know they are part of ongoing criminal investigations. That said, is that a reasonable reason for why executive privilege should be exerted?
Those are not bad reasons, but executive privilege is not the remedy. So that's a quick stopgap. That's to say, full stop, we're not doing this tonight, tomorrow, next week, anytime soon. But they know that that's not going to be the ultimate argument. There are real arguments here on both sides, and reasonable people can disagree on the merits. But executive privilege is not meant to be this large protective umbrella. It's meant to be for very narrow circumstances, and courts, again, don't like it. So they don't like it when it's done on the one-off cases. They sure are not going to like it in the absolute. That being said, it's a delay tactic, and it'll buy some time.
One of the questions is, what's the end game here for Democrats, right? Are they going to move towards impeachment? Because their leadership sure doesn't seem behind it. We're always hearing Nancy Pelosi being asked what she thinks about impeachment. She was asked again. Here's what she had to say.
Well, nothing is ever off the table, but I would say that everybody would take a deep breath and be almost prayerful about this.
What does she want Democrats? I know, and I wondered what you thought about that. What does she want Democrats to pray on?
Right. What are you going to the Lord in prayer about when it comes to impeachment? I think, she has essentially said the same thing over and over. It's never really off the table. I think that table is somewhere in a back room in storage, behind bars somewhere. She knows she has a restless party, restless grassroots people certainly, and people who basically voted so that the Democrats could have an aggressive oversight. And that's what we're seeing with these investigations and calls for documents and subpoenas as well. We'll see how long she can hold the dam. I mean, you saw some of those folks in that committee today say, oh, the president might be inching closer and closer to impeachment. I think the problem with impeachment has always been the math isn't there, right? They control the House, they don't control the Senate. Even if they file articles of impeachment, it's not going to remove the president.
And it's certainly a political determination, but from a legal standpoint, the best way the Democrats can get this 6E grand jury material and the other material, the underlying evidence that's now being protected by executive privilege, is to have an impeachment proceeding. So it's a bit chicken and egg here, right? Do you go with what you have now? Is that enough of a basis for impeachment? But having the impeachment proceedings open is the best way to signal to courts, we have a real reason, a real need for this information. Therefore, you have to give it to us as soon as possible. So it's a bit of a circular problem there.
Very interesting. Joe Moreno, Nia, thank you so much to both of you.